And hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 election debates live from the ASU TV studio here on ASU TV. I'm Jonathan Reeves. At this hour, the candidates for the U.S. Representative 1st Congressional District seat will debate. The candidates here tonight are the Democratic candidate, Rodney Govens, and the Libertarian candidate, Dr. Stephen Gene Parsons. We extended invitations to the incumbent U.S. Representative Rick Crawford, and we did not receive a response in a timely manner. However, all three candidates will be participating in a debate on AETN Tuesday morning at 11. Questions will be asked by a panel of journalists from local and state news organizations. Tonight's debate on ASU TV is made possible through a partnership with KASU Public Radio on the campus of Arkansas State, KLEK Radio in Jonesboro, the Herald newspaper, Delta Digital News, and Red Wolf Radio, all on the campus of Arkansas State University. Now, prior to the debate tonight, the candidates agreed to the rules of the debate, which are the following. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement. After the panelists' first question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond and for rebuttal. The initial candidate will then have 1 minute for a final retort. The panelists will then ask a second question to all candidates in a 2-minute open forum style. All panelists will ask questions to candidates in the order in which they were drawn, and each candidate will be given 2 minutes for a closing statement. Now, the order of the candidates' questions was determined through a random draw on September 26th. Candidates, thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate you being here at Arkansas State University. The order in which the opening statements will be delivered was determined backstage, and here with the first opening statement for tonight is Dr. Stephen Parsons. Whenever you're ready.
First, I'd like to thank everyone who was involved with coordinating, organizing, and producing this debate. As a third party in particular, it's difficult to be able to explain your platform, explain your position. It's difficult for anyone who's not an incumbent, but for a third party in particular, it's difficult. So greatly appreciate it. And you could ask the presidential candidate, Chase Oliver, who's on the ballot also in November as a Libertarian for president, or Mike Termat, fellow PhD economist, on the ballot for vice president, who weren't involved in any of the major debates. So greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this. Also, I wanted to thank Rodney Govens for graciously being here beside me for this debate. For background, I grew up in a staunchly Republican household and in a small family business that started out as a refurbished chicken coop. One year we lived on 17 cents an hour. All other money was put back into the business. My parents complained that it was, by the way, that business eventually had over 100 employees. A lot of hard work, a lot of being frugal is what allowed that business to exist and survive. But my parents complained that taxes and regulations made it increasingly difficult to be able to even run any kind of a business. The two-party systems, both parties had failed us. Later, I went on to earn 2 fellowships to earn my PhD in economics. I have made my life work. I've made my living by providing to companies around the globe, providing advice and help to make real-world business decisions in the face of government regulations, restrictions, and constraints. I also was on faculty at Washington University as an adjunct professor for over 20 years, teaching applied economics to students in the School of Engineering.
All right, thank you, Mr. Parsons. Appreciate that. Mr. Govens?
First, thank you to Arkansas State University for hosting us. Thank you to all of the participating panelists. I can't thank you guys enough, especially when it comes to community radio and when it comes to journalism. I believe that the attacks that we have in our country today are fruitless. They're not working for anybody. I believe that the time for change has come today. I believe that the current incumbent that you don't see up here feels that he is untouchable. He feels that he does not answer to the people anymore. And I feel like that time for change is here now. We need to go ahead and help Mr. Crawford secure some fruitful employment, because currently he is suing the American taxpayer. Everybody within earshot of my voice, even the one streaming right now, he is suing you because he doesn't think he makes enough money. He wants 12 years of back pay. This is the same incumbent that hasn't had a town hall in 12 years. This is the same incumbent that shuts down his social media for public commentary. This is the same incumbent that continues to get reelected. And I have a problem when you don't listen to the people's voice and you then go to Washington, D.C. trying to say that you represent the people here in Arkansas. You don't. So we want to go ahead and make sure, when it comes to a platform perspective, that we make effective change in this country. Foster care is in shambles. The worst kept secret in America is that the foster care system is not working. The Veterans Administration, healthcare, and administration system is broken. And it's time that we fix it for our veterans, the same ones that we say thank you for your service to. It is time for change, and that time is now. My name is Rodney Govens. I am running as the Democratic nominee here for U.S. House District 1. And I cannot wait to represent your voice in Washington, D.C. come this December, or come this November.
Thank you so much for those opening statements, gentlemen. We really appreciate that. When we come back from this break, our panel will start their questions for the candidates. This is Election 2024 coverage live from Arkansas State University here on ASU TV. We'll be back after this.
Here at Lost Pizza, we like to stay classy. But in the kitchen, we take care of business. Get lost.
I think one of the things I learned at Arkansas State was life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you respond to it, and that's just something that I live by.
A-State is home, and they're going to treat you like you're a part of the family.
And welcome back to ASU TV and tonight's political debate as part of Election 2024 coverage. Our first panelist for tonight's debate is Mr. Leganzi Kale. Mr. Kale is the founder and general manager of KLEK 102.5 FM, Jonesboro's first and only black-owned radio station. With extensive experience as a broadcaster, Leganzi is recognized at local, state, and national levels for his dedication to community service. He's passionate about the empowering of citizens of Jonesboro through education and entertainment, fostering awareness of current affairs and events. His mission is to build bridges and build communities, ensuring lasting positive change. Mr. Kale, thank you for being here tonight. Your first question goes to Dr. Stephen Parsons.
Thank you. Given the increasing rates of population decline in rural areas of Arkansas, particularly in District 1, how will you address the root causes of this exodus, such as lack of economic opportunity, health care, and education? What specific initiatives will you put in place to not only retain residents, but also attract new talent and investment?
So first, if you look at birth rates in recent history, it's about 1.2%. This is for the country in total, 1.2%. The death rate is 1%. If you do the math, it's not difficult. That's a tiny population growth. So static population exists for the entire country. One of the things that's important to me is immigration policy. So if you're concerned, and by the way, if you think historically about what the nature of the growth has been in this country, you could go back to the early 20th century and where net population growth was more like, instead of 0.2%, it was 5.4% or 4%, depending on what exactly the time period was. Were you talking about 1870 or 1920? It was substantially higher, but a lot of that was driven by some natural population growth, but also by immigration. This is a country which has been built on immigration. So immigration, change in the immigration policy is a critically important thing in this country, and I can tell you the kinds of things I can do. I may not have all of the time to be able to do that. But first, we have to change the work visa and green card rules so that you can bring workers into this country legally. For me, the key thing is let's change the policies so that there is a meaningful legal mechanism by which to bring immigrants into this country. One of the second ones would be, if you think you're going to build a wall, then we can build a wall around the safety net programs. Build a wall around welfare. So it's going to be difficult to work with immigration if we don't do those two things. And I'll talk about another two things when I have more time.
Thank you, Dr. Parsons. Mr. Govens, please.
So the rural population here in Arkansas has been on the decline for multiple different reasons. And without talking about those reasons, and we continue to ignore them, then we're never going to fix the problem. The maternal death rate in the state of Arkansas is vastly too high. I think we're number 1 or 2 when it comes to maternal death rate per capita here in the state of Arkansas compared to our peers across this country. And it is far time that we start expanding rural health care into those areas that need them. Places like Elaine, Arkansas, places like Chico County down with Lake Village and Eudora. We need to have accessible health care for every single person across the Delta. Every single person across northern Arkansas. We have 27 counties amongst the 31 in this district that don't even have a single OBGYN. Our population is going down because we can't keep them healthy. That's one issue. The second issue is infrastructure. In many counties across this state, we still don't have adequate broadband infrastructure. I am proud to say that when I was in telecommunications, we helped bring fiber to the home internet to places like Eudora, Arkansas, Humnoke, Arkansas, Carlisle, Arkansas, Parkdale, Portland, Hamburg, and Crossett, because it should not be dictated what your resources and opportunities are growing up. You should have every resource to be successful no matter where you live. We need to invest in our infrastructure, and we need to go ahead and fix our maternal death rate here, right here in the state of Arkansas, so that our kids don't feel like they have to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Govens. Dr. Parsons, would you like to respond?
The one thing I will say is that a lot of the kinds of things that could be or should be done need to be done at the state level. So the federal government has a role to do some kinds of things. The 10th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution itself suggests that, I'll describe the 10th Amendment. 10th Amendment says that if a power is not specifically granted to the federal government in the Constitution itself, then that power resides with the states or with the people themselves. The 10th Amendment suggests that government has to be narrow, federal government. State government, that's a different topic. Federal government has to be narrow and small. So a lot of the kinds of things that can be done for the state of Arkansas in District 1 has to be done at the state and local levels. The other part would be, there are things we can do to reduce regulations, reduce international tariffs, things that will make the country in total, including Arkansas District 1, better so that it makes it easier for everyone to be economically successful. And I hope I'll be able to talk about those in a later question.
Dr. Parsons, thank you so very much for that. Now, Mr. Kale, your next question is for the candidates. This will be a 2-minute open forum after you ask the question.
All right. So with the increasing disparities in broadband access across rural District 1, which affect everything from education to business development and healthcare, how do you prioritize and implement policies to close the digital divide?
And now you all both can go, and this is open forum.
So when it comes to broadband infrastructure specifically, we have a problem in this country where we continue to give corporate subsidies to companies that don't care about the rural areas here in this country. That just doesn't sound right. You're using taxpayer dollars, but you're not building a network that's equitable and accessible and affordable to the people that are actually subsidizing your company. So with my idea, what I want to do is for every dollar that goes into a corporate subsidy to the AT&Ts and to the Comcasts of the world, I require that you take 25 cents of that dollar and go into a town of less than 5,000 people and build adequate broadband infrastructure. Fiber to the home. That is not just the future, that is the here, now, and present. And if we can go ahead and give every single child the same opportunity to be successful in Elaine that we do in Little Rock, it is going to be amazing what we can accomplish together as a society in one unified front. From an economic development perspective, you're always going to need three things in order to build a company. You need power. I think we can get that almost everywhere. We need telephone. We've got telephone wire everywhere, but you need broadband. And that can be scarce, especially going through the Delta. So let's go ahead and expand and do exactly what I've been doing when I worked at Swift Fiber. Do exactly what I was doing when I worked at Windstream. And we know how to implement these processes correctly so that we can go ahead and enjoy the fruits of the very labor that we've been putting in for decades.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll take a quick break. We will continue with the debate for the U.S. Representative 1st Congressional District race. This is Election 2024 coverage live from Arkansas State University here on ASU TV. We'll be back after this.
For over 25 years, Papacella's Pizza Chef has been serving up flavors that keep you coming back for more. With 19 gourmet pizzas, 6 fresh salads, 10 mouth-watering subs, and our famous handmade calzone, there's something for everyone. And we're growing our team. Papacella's Pizza Chef, over 25 years of great food, great people, and now, great opportunities for you.
When you say experience counts, it's experience that counts for a lifetime.
Boxes, boxes, I cannot fit in the boxes. Stop it, quitting was never an option. Exhausted, this passion is never exhausted. And you cannot stop it, nah, you cannot stop it. Quitting was never an option.
And welcome back to ASU TV's live political debate as part of Election 2024 coverage. Our next panelist tonight is Mr. Brandon Tabor. Mr. Tabor is the news director and morning edition host at Arkansas State University's public radio station KASU, where he plays a crucial role in delivering timely and relevant news. In addition to providing essential information to music to his listeners, he also is dedicated to nurturing the next generation of media professionals, offering them valuable career opportunities in communications. Mr. Tabor, thank you so much for being here this evening. Your first question tonight goes to Mr. Rodney Govens.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So the both of you, you will be, if you are elected, you'll be representing Congressional District 1, which is big in agriculture, but it also has a growing steel industry. So if you were elected, what would you do to protect Arkansas's growing steel industry?
So the steel industry is growing. And as a matter of fact, Arkansas has figured out something that nowhere else has, really, is how to be profitable when it comes to the steel industry. What we need to do is we need to go ahead and incentivize, and not just subsidize, but incentivize and keep in mind the employees that are actually bleeding and sweating on the very floors that the steel industry is being successful with. So I think what we want to do is we want to go ahead and start talking about federal subsidy dollars into going into steel, but we also have to be mindful of our agriculture, as you spoke on earlier. Our agriculture is so depleted when you compare to 12 years ago, even 14 years ago. So it's concerning for me because the incumbent says that he's an ag man, but we've killed all the subsidy programs for cotton and soybean and some of the crops that Arkansas is known for. Arkansas feeds the world, but we treat our farmers like trash. And Arkansas is home to some of the biggest industries like steel, right? We've got a thriving telecom industry, but we don't treat our employees with an equitable fashion. And I think we need to go ahead and incentivize companies, but we have to put in some parameters to make sure that not only are the steel industries and the agriculture industries continuing to be successful, but that the employees and the people that are on the ground can actually have some sweat in the game financially as well.
Dr. Parsons, your response.
Part of the issue with government in general, the federal government in particular, is this notion that we can micromanage business, that we need a subsidy here, that we need a subsidy there. For any libertarian perspective, what I want is every business to stand up and compete on its own merits. So I don't want to disadvantage them with regulations. I don't want to give them corporate welfare by providing subsidies either. I'll tell you one of the key things I would not do, and that is that I'm going to now talk about the elephant not in the room. So the incumbent has a proposal which is called the Mexican Surge Steel. He would use the Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act to say, let's put back a 25% tariff on Mexican steel. That might be good for steel producers in Arkansas, but I'll tell you what the big problem is. Tariffs in general are amazingly bad policies. Ask farmers in Arkansas how the trade war with China went. Also, Mexico is our most, of any country on the planet besides ourselves, Mexico is the most important country on the planet to us because, one, it is our biggest customer. Canada's number 2. Next, if we're going to deal with immigration, we have to have help from Mexico. And if you read any of the discussion about the new Mexican president, what kinds of problems exist there, immigration is a tough topic. They're trying their best to try and restrict immigration. 3 is if you want to try and control fentanyl, we need help from Mexico. So the last thing that you should be doing is trying to protect Arkansas steel by having a tariff on Mexican steel in particular, because tariffs simply don't work. They lead to inflation. It's bad policy.
Well, thank you, Dr. Parsons. Mr. Govens, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, I don't agree that the federal government doesn't have a role in it. I do agree that I'd love to see business stand on its own. But what we've seen time and time again is without any kind of regulation, companies in corporate America takes advantage of not just their consumers, but their employees as well. So we have to incentivize them to do the right thing, especially when you're doing business in America. We've got to protect American lives. We have to go ahead and throw some regulations on top of what pesticides you can and can't use. I don't want my kids getting cancer from some crazy pesticide that some farmer wants to use simply because we want to deregulate. So we definitely want to go ahead and focus on regulations, but they've got to make sense. We can't just throw out regulations and micromanage, just as you said. I completely agree with you. But we also have to have a seat at the table and we have to have a voice. And for those farmers that don't have a voice right now, I hope that they understand that change can come.
Mr. Tabor, your next question goes to all the candidates. This will be for a 2-minute open forum.
Okay. While we did talk a little bit about, I did mention a little bit about the agriculture, and we started talking about agriculture. So we're going to stick around with agriculture. Okay. You know, the industry, it's really big here in Arkansas, but it is very hard to get younger generations interested in the farming industry. So what would you do if elected to encourage younger people to take up farming?
So first, let me just talk generically about agriculture. I'm not sure about the ways in which you can get younger people to take up farming. Part of that is if farms can stand on their own, that's great. The existing subsidy programs, agricultural subsidy programs, began. The first one was signed by FDR in 1933. Let's put this in perspective. In 1933, the unemployment rate for the United States hit 25%. That year, 200,000 farms were foreclosed upon. That's a way different kind of an environment. And by the way, that first act has now exploded into 150 different subsidy programs. There are subsidies. So, for example, if you want to raise broccoli or cauliflower, your subsidies are minuscule. The U.S. sugar industry, however, receives 60% of their revenues from farm subsidies or from the USDA subsidy program. That allows us to be #1 in childhood obesity, which is not something I think the United States should be proud of.
So I think, you know, for me, I was adopted into a family that worked farmers market retail. So if somebody asked me to shell any more butter beans in my life, we're going to have some problems, right? These thumbs still hurt from '98. But what I know is there is interest in it. The problem is, how do we activate it and capitalize on it and keep the interest there? Without adequate infrastructure, without adequate programs to go ahead and encourage these kids, the Future Farmers of America program can only do so much. What we need to do is we need to go ahead and make farming fun again. We need to introduce that technology, and we need to make it affordable. Without the technology, we're not going to be able to actually harness the power of a farm and the results of the farming for the good of the community. We need to go ahead and make sure that we've got the coders and we've got the software developers, and that right there can go ahead and encourage children to get involved in farming. We've got a huge booming population of people interested in AI. Can't wait to see what the next generation of AI farming could look like at the hands of our kids today.
Mr. Govens, thank you very much. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with this debate for the U.S. Representative 1st Congressional District race. This is Election 2024 coverage live from Arkansas State University here on ASU TV. We'll be back after this.
Wings to Go has the flavors. Did I mention Wings to Go has the flavors? Dry rub, tasty sauces. We shake them. We toss them. Get Wings to Go.
Red Wolf Radio is a student-led organization at Arkansas State University wanting to hear your takes on pop culture, music, the news, and college life. Just about anything you can think of. Located in the Education and Communications building on campus, we are always looking for more volunteers. So if you're an Arkansas State University student, no matter the major, and this is something that interests you, shoot us an email at redwolfradio@astate.edu. That's redwolfradio@astate.edu. Let them hear you howl.
And welcome back to this political debate on ASU TV as part of Election 2024 coverage. The next panelist for today is Mr. Jerry Don Burton. Mr. Burton is an aspiring multimedia journalist currently in his junior year at Arkansas State University. Jerry is committed to a career in journalism as it offers him an opportunity to continuously learn and to share insights through his writing, aligning perfectly with his personal and professional aspirations. Mr. Burton, thank you so much for being here tonight. Your first question goes to Dr. Stephen Parsons.
Thank you. Dr. Parsons, with student loan debt increasing every year, what initiatives would you support or propose in Congress to address student debt?
I absolutely understand. Student debt is a big issue. Expenses for students have increased by about 66% over, I can't remember exactly what the time period is, but it's risen substantially. Currently, student debt is $1.7 trillion. Here are the reasons why I would not forgive student debt, because I know that's one of the hot topics, and that is, number one, it's not fair. It's not fair to somebody who went to school, took out a loan, repaid the loan, or someone who went to school, never took out a loan. More importantly, it's not fair to the people who never went to school. Or imagine someone who, instead of going to school, started a small business, took out a loan, has hired people, has created employment. So I would absolutely not do that. What we can do, however, are some of the fundamental things that will allow everyone to do better. By the way, I think America's been sold a bill of goods with the notion that it's sort of if you go get a four-year degree, that is the golden ticket. Lots of four-year degrees have a negative net present value. They don't pay for themselves. So there are a lot of good degrees, but because of subsidized student loans, I think that is a big part of the reason why America travels down this road of thinking, I can go get a 4-year degree and it is golden. That's my ticket. And by the way, this is somebody who's, my wife is a now retired pathologist. Between us, we have a ridiculous number of years of higher education. But what we can't do is forgive the loans. And I would phase out the subsidized student loans because I think that's part of the problem. I think, if anything, I would do whatever I can to help guide younger people to say, here are good career choices. You get an 18-month certification in a technical degree, and especially in healthcare.
Mr. Govens, would you like to respond?
Yes, and I'll disagree with my opponent here. When it comes to student loan debt relief, I would love to live in a world where student loans didn't have to be in the tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I don't live in that world. I live in reality. And the reality of the situation is that back in 1964, it cost you less than $200 to go to the University of Arkansas Fayetteville, tuition and books included. Now, at the University of Arkansas Fayetteville, Arkansas State University, Arkansas Pine Bluff are all subsidized by federal and state dollars, taxpayer dollars. So why in the world is tuition $18,000 a semester to go to UA on the Hill? That does not make any sense at all. I am sick and tired of our young people being told that they have to go get a degree, and they're being told by LinkedIn. They're being told by corporate America. They're being told by every single employer that you've got to bring a degree to the table if you want to have a career at this company. And then we turn around and we don't pay them adequate wages to not only live, but also pay back that student loan. So yes, I believe in student loan debt relief for all. And I believe that we need to go ahead and start fresh. And I am anticipating a huge economic boom, because if I go ahead and forgive you student loan debt, I could only imagine how much pocket money you have to actually go out into the community and support local businesses and buy those things that are needed for your home and actually save up money so that you can buy your first home and start building your life. I fully support student loan debt relief, but I also take it a step further. We need more caseworkers in our foster care system. We need more law enforcement officers, good law enforcement officers, and we need more public servants like firefighters. And if we go ahead and can get you in some programs that will go ahead and give you the education at a higher level to fulfill those roles, you will not have student loans if you give 5 years to the Department of Human Services or your local law enforcement department.
Dr. Parsons, you have 1 minute.
So one of the things we can do is to make sure that educational institutions have skin in the game in the loan business. So one way you can do that is, for whatever the institution is, especially if that institution has granted that student a degree, that if they default, if that student defaults, now that institution, because they've not done a very good job either in educating the student or in guiding the student, they now have some skin in the game. So that this provides the incentive for educational institutions to create useful, economically productive degrees and to guide students towards them. I'll guarantee you, if you do that, there's going to be better education in this country.
Dr. Parsons, thank you. Mr. Burton, your next question is for both the candidates. This is for a 2-minute open forum, please.
So for my follow-up, the Herald student newspaper reached out to the A-State student body to send in their questions for the debate. Jada Sumter from West Helena, Arkansas asks, what are your plans to help students from low-income communities who want to attend college but do not have the means to do so because of barriers such as application fees or access to college visits?
You want to take that? I go? All right. So from a low-income perspective, I know what that life is like, and I know the opportunities that you are hindered from getting. And now we need to go ahead and focus there. When there's a house on fire in my subdivision, the fire department doesn't swing by my house to put it out. They go to the house that has the fire going. And that's where we need to go ahead and focus our water energy right now. Helena, West Helena is an impoverished community, and they continue to go down in population every census. We need to go ahead and open up opportunities for children that come from Helena, West Helena, children from Elaine, children from Mariana, so that they can go and chase their dreams, not just through higher education, but through a career. We need to go ahead and make sure that those loans that those kids get are actually subsidized at a very low interest rate so that they can afford it if they don't choose one of the civil servant degree paths that many of us feel we know our society needs. We need to go ahead and focus our efforts in making sure that every kid has the same resources available to them in Elaine and in Helena, West Helena as they do in Little Rock and Fayetteville. And a part of that is going to have to be revamping the student loan process, revamping the way that we subsidize our colleges and universities, and ensuring that those kids are set up for success long before they start filling out a college application. Broadband's a big part of that, infrastructure's a big part of that, but the bigger part of that is making sure that our public education throughout the Delta has the same resources and opportunities to be successful as we see in Little Rock and Fayetteville.
So there are a variety of, there are subsidies that exist. There are fellowship scholarships that exist. One of the things I've done, for my wife and I, we've been fortunate. We've been blessed because we've made a lot of money, we've saved, we've been frugal, and we've invested. Between us, we will give the vast majority of our wealth to philanthropic organizations. It's part of the reason why I can say, if I'm elected, I will take zero salary. I'll take the stipend to travel and for, but I will accept zero salary. And I will give all of the money back to philanthropic organizations in this district. And not only while we're alive, but especially when we die, my wife and I will be giving away the vast majority of our wealth. We're constantly looking at different organizations. Where is it best? Should it be mental health? Should it be substance abuse? We want to give a lot of places, and therein lies the problem. With a $35 trillion debt, you can't give money to all of these things. They may all be good. I believe everybody has a moral responsibility to help other people in need. But the U.S. Constitution in general doesn't allow the federal government to be the entity that provides that. And moreover, with a $35 trillion debt, it's your children, it's your grandchildren who will suffer. And I won't go through the details, but with $35 trillion debt, things can happen. We're now at a debt that's so big that it's a pretty iffy. So behind the scenes, that's always where I'm coming from. A lot of good things to give your money to, can't give it to all of them.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll take a quick break and continue with the debate for the U.S. Representative 1st Congressional District race. This is election 2024 coverage live from Arkansas State University here on ASU TV. We'll be back after this.
When you say experience counts, it's experience that counts for a lifetime.
Boxes, boxes, I cannot fit in the boxes. Stop it, stop it. Quitting was never an option. Exhausted, exhausted. This passion is never exhausted. And you cannot stop it. Nah, you cannot stop it. Quitting was never an option. And you cannot stop it. Nah, you cannot stop it.
ASU TV, shows like Red Wolf Roundtable, ASU TV News, Westside Football, and more. Gain real-life experience while doing what you love. Get involved with ASU TV today.
Mr. Leganzi Kale, will come back to you for the next question here, and this question will go toward Mr. Rodney Govens.
As the cost of living continues to rise and affordable housing becomes increasingly scarce in both urban and rural parts of District 1, what policies would you advocate for to ensure that working families, veterans, and seniors have access to safe and affordable housing?
You know, it's always been amazing to me living here in Arkansas, and I've lived in a lot of different states during my time in telecom and in the United States Army. All the states that I've lived in have always had a landlord and tenant act. Arkansas is the only one that doesn't. A Landlord and Tenant Act is not only needed for this state, but we need to start thinking about this federally. We've got a lot of landlords that take advantage of the renter. They take advantage of the very impoverished people that are living in their homes. We need to go ahead and institute some penalties. I know plenty of places right now that you wouldn't even let your dog live in, but they're going ahead and renting them out for $650 a month. That is a far cry from what needs to happen, and that's far cry from morality, if you ask me. So what we would do is we would go ahead and get with our real estate agents, and we would get with our states, and we would go ahead and figure out a way that we have some kind of oversight on the way people live in these areas. It's unfair for a landlord to not get their rent. That's unfair. But it is also unfair to have to live in a place that has no AC in the summer. It's unfair to live in a place that has poor insulation and you bring home a newborn baby. It is unfair to the renter to not have a fenced-in yard when they have a dog. It is unfair to the renter in too many cases that we see across not just the 1st Congressional District, but across Arkansas as a whole. What we need to do is we need to focus on renters' rights. And we need to make sure that we go ahead and institute some penalties for some of these landlords that are taking just full advantage of the rental situation that we have here across this state and across this district specifically.
Mr. Govens, thank you. Dr. Parsons.
Yeah, for whatever kinds of constraints you put on landlords, I will guarantee you, that's going to reduce the number of rental units. If you've done things where make it less profitable, less feasible to rent, you're going to have fewer rentals. One of the key things you want to do in terms of getting construction, we need to change the tax law because the current tax law is biased against long-term capital investment. So if I'm a contractor and I make an investment, land a building, and that could be a farmer that has a structure, 20-year depreciation recovery. That creates a bias against anybody who's making long-term capital investments, including people who build houses. So we have to change that. Second, there are a variety of regulations we can change, and I can talk about some of those. But also, we need to do 2 other things. Number 1, we need to change the immigration laws, especially the green card and work visa laws, so that you can bring workers in to help. And that's not just for construction, that's for agriculture. So for example, not as much in Arkansas, but in the United States in total, for farm workers, not farm owners, 70% of farm workers in the United States were born in Mexico. Second thing is we need to eliminate the trade wars and cut tariffs. Because if you have a business, let's be clear, a tariff is a tax on a U.S. business which is trying to import something which they're going to be using in their own production process. If you have tariffs, you have raised the costs of all kinds of businesses. So if we cut tariffs, that's going to reduce costs. And we know that the evidence indicates that about 90% at least of the tariff cost is passed on to consumers. So we can change the tax law, we can reduce other regulations, we can change the immigration law, and we can cut or eliminate the trade wars, eliminate the trade wars and reduce tariffs.
Thank you, Dr. Parsons. Mr. Govens.
So I agree with you that we need some protections, because that's what it sounds like you're alluding to, is that we need some protections, and not just for our renters, but for our consumers as well. I would argue that the federal government has stuff in place to go ahead and do that. We just have poor implementation and poor execution at this point by the incumbent that's not here. So what I would really like to focus on, though, is the part where you talked about where if we go ahead and change these things and we introduce the Landlord-Tenant Act and we introduce some of this oversight, it's going to cause problems. Dr. Parsons, we have problems now. We have problems where you're paying $1,200 a month for a studio apartment in rural Arkansas. These problems exist right now, and we need to go ahead and have some oversight to shut that stuff down, because that is predatory. That is predatory on the consumer, and it is predatory on the people here in the 1st Congressional District.
Mr. Kell, your next question is for all the candidates. Once again, it's for an open forum.
In the area of growing distrust in government institutions, how will you work to restore faith in democracy?
Yeah, that would be.
So I believe this is an amazingly important topic. because the recent research, meaning this year, between 10, depending on what study you look at, between 10 and 40% of the U.S. population believes that political violence is acceptable under certain circumstances. I've signed 3 different pledges that require me to do the following 3 things. 1, to ensure election integrity. 2nd, to say no political violence. Absolutely no political violence. There's no place for political violence in this country. And then the 3rd thing is to accept the rule of law. I think anybody with a platform should be making those 3 statements. And part of the way you make the statement, as you say, as part of the rule of law, is Biden was legally elected in this country. By the way, that's something that the incumbent, as best I know, has never said. So everybody has to say, no political violence, we're going to respect the rule of law. So everyone has to do that. There are a variety of things that can be done at the state and local level in terms of protecting people. I encourage everyone to read the report, which is called Lost, Not Stolen. This is written by a who's who of conservative election law experts. And as someone who's published in 8 different law journals, I can tell you, this is excellent scholarly research, but it's still readable. It evaluates all 184 claims, all 62 lawsuits and 2 other legal column lawsuits. Evaluates every single one of them, and part of their conclusion is, and this is about the 2020 election, not a single precinct. There was not sufficient fraud in a single precinct to cause that precinct to switch. So to me, that's the fundamental thing. This thing is what people have to do.
Dr. Parsons, thank you. Mr. Govens.
Democracy at its core is what we're founded on. We're a federal republic, but democracy is the foundation upon which we built this country. Now, the incumbent, as Dr. Parsons alluded to, did support the fact that the election was not fair. To him, I would say, then I guess I need to be calling Congressman Monty Hodges instead to be here instead of his office. But, you know, at the end of the day, the election in 2020 was fair, it was free, there was no fraud. Donald Trump did not win that election on the presidential side. And Monty Hodges, unfortunately, did not win on the Democratic side here in Arkansas. But we can go ahead and fix that come this November. My wife used to be an election commissioner. It is a long, drawn-out process, and there were many, many nights where she didn't come home on time. So I'm going to tell you right now, with twins that I've got at home, I need all the help I can get. So I understand the election process through and through, and it can be complicated and it can be complex. But here's the thing, is we've got great people that work these elections, that understand the challenges, and our elections will be free and fair. And outside of the pledges that I've sent, I will have no problem going ahead and recognizing the election results as they are.
All right, Mr. Govens, thank you very much. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll have the closing statements in tonight's political debate here on ASU TV. We'll be back right after this.
Students should watch ASU TV just to see the creativity that a college student can get. The creativity that some of these students have is truly amazing. Getting that experience can really just take you further, and I feel like our program does that for a lot of students.
And welcome back to ASU TV for tonight's live political debate for the U.S. Representative 1st Congressional District race. It has come to that point in the broadcast where we're now going to the closing statements. And our first closing statement tonight goes to Mr. Rodney Govens.
So again, thank you all for allowing me to talk up all your anytime minutes today in such a dry topic of politics. But at the end of the day, this is important and this is a serious race. We have an incumbent who doesn't even have the respect level to show up here so that you can go ahead and see him for the first time in 12 years. We have an incumbent that doesn't answer his constituents' Facebook messages, emails, phone calls. We have an incumbent that right now is suing the United States of America's taxpayers in federal claims court for a pay raise and back pay. We have problems with our incumbent right now in the 1st Congressional District. And I hope everybody that can hear me understands that we have a choice when it comes in November at that ballot box. Now, I don't know Mr. Crawford personally, and I don't attack the man personally, but I'm going to introduce myself personally since he's not here to go ahead and do it for himself as well. I'm a veteran. I served my country from 2001 to 2005 in the United States Army. I was Signal Corps, and I served in Iraq from 2003 to 2004. And I miss every single person that I served with. I don't miss some of the orders and the guys giving those orders, but I miss the guys that I worked with. I've been in telecommunications for 20 years. I started as an installer at Time Warner Cable and worked my way up to be a director at Windstream before I left to work in a more private setting with Swift Fiber. And I'm proud of all the work that we did. I'm also a KASU. I'm a court-appointed special advocate. I represent foster kids every single day in the court of law, right there in family court, and I'm their voice. And as hard as I advocate for my foster kids, I want everybody to understand in the 1st Congressional District, I'm going to advocate just as hard for you, for your benefit, for your infrastructure, for your agriculture, for your steel, for you. And at the end of the day, we've got to advocate for the same exact thing that everybody across the district advocates for. Same thing that I've got experience in. We got to advocate for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Mr. Govens. Dr. Parsons, your closing statement, please.
Thanks again to everyone involved with this organization putting on this debate. Thank you, Mr. Govens and Congressman Crawford for your military service. 97% of incumbent House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives races are won by the incumbent. This will be an even harder than average one to flip. That doesn't mean that your vote's unimportant. In fact, I'd argue that this time your vote is even more important, and I'll tell you why. If you vote for me as a Libertarian, it sends a signal that hyperpartisan, business as usual is no longer acceptable. And that's a message I would say I'm going to send to the congressman. In 2010, when candidate Crawford was in the debate, he said, this is not about sending the Washington insider back to Washington to continue the status quo. We need someone with some common sense solutions, some real world experience, and some free market ideas. The 2024 Congressman Crawford is the Washington insider and the status quo. He has replaced common sense solutions with hyperpartisanship, marching lockstep with the party line, regurgitating the party line, and being the party guy. He has his notions of business experience and real world experience is a distant memory. And he has sacrificed free market notions with protectionism, suggestions for tariffs, continued regulations. He's abandoned those. So send a message to the Washington insider by voting for me.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here tonight. We really appreciate this debate. Thank you. Now you can go ahead and watch this debate on demand on the ASU TV YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel where you'll get notified about live ASU TV programming, including next week's debate. Again, thanks so much to our candidates, our panelists, the audience here in the ASU TV studio, and you watching at home. And also thanks to the ASU TV production crew working behind the scenes to put this debate on the air for their stellar job. Also thanks to KASU, KLEK, the Herald, Delta Digital News, and Red Wolf Radio. Just a reminder, Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you for joining us, and good night.